Hey guys, here we are. One more RWI, Reimagining Wealth Initiative Touchdown 2024. We are moving slowly, organically, but we are moving. We are moving, right? And there's there's a lot to share, in even that we're moving so slowly, but there's a lot to share. And the first thing that I want to say is that the first experimentation that we're going to do this year, when it comes to things that we talked about at the end of 2023, is to make some experience in the Gather Town platform, right? So we're going, because Stefan has an infusion, his infusion labs is present in the Gather Town as an NGO, like a third sector initiative project, right? And it's going to be interesting to use it even to experiment like a place for the fourth sector TV and proposal, right? And for me, in my mind, in so much things that are converging at the same time, like the new type of convergence that is happening between Taudal and Sensorica, for instance, that we kicked off last week. We can talk about a little bit about that too today. The convergence that is going to happen between Sensorica in the first Web3 regenerative cultural protocol, RWI, regenerative resources, that is going to happen this year. So if we're going to list up a word between all things that each one of us are doing, is convergence. I don't have a doubt about that. So that said, I feel that we are converging.
Monsieur?
We're better converging.
Okay, merci.
Oh, she's speaking French. That's beautiful.
I'm trying to pull my car out of my garage.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Love your accent. I'm just going to mute you. Do I need to mute you, Laurie? Or
yeah,
it's okay now?
Sure.
Okay. And so that said, we're going to have this experience. We're going to converge once we got acquainted a little bit via IOPA collaboration with Stefan about the content in the process, the dynamics around infusion labs, right? We're going to, via RWI, we're going to converge and do some experimentation on infusion lab space in Gather Town. So it's going to be nice for us to talk a little bit about this. And I talked with Flouting, if Flouting could do this coordination with Stefan, because they had a very, very, very good touchdown when I was traveling to South of Brazil between them some weeks ago, how to do this work, how we can start this work in Gather Town. And I feel to be that is going to be a very interesting experience, that relates to the new mission states for Sensorica, for instance, right? And exploration that can open, not only be Discord dish, like only in terms of virtuality, it only happens on Discord. Imagine people coming to, Sensorica's Gather Town dynamics. So, and we can do that through this RWI interface that we're going to create with the Infusion Labs there. So yeah, it's going to be nice to do this experimentation alone, right? The other thing is, let's say, now in March, not now in February, but in March, we're going to start to onboard projects coming from Europe, Asia, Africa, Americas, and Canada, of course, for in English. We're going to start to onboard in English projects, and it's going to be nice that Sensorica, with its hosts, you know, of projects, it's going to be the first experience to do this. So it's going to be nice to have you, TB, and other folks that are coming around Sensorica in 2024 to get to know Riri, right? To get to have this experience. So here we go. Another thing that is interesting is that I proposed to Stefan to do some work around what the fuck 3 talks that I have been doing here, and the D program called Take the Vision Camps. And we're starting to understand how we can run this in Canada, right? And of course, I want to run with you guys too. So you guys are going to be part of this too. So there's loads of things happening, and it's going to be nice for us to talk a little bit about each one of these things that I just highlighted. So be very welcome. It's going to be nice to hear you, TB, once Lauren is driving. So, man, feel free to check in and just share a little bit about this week in Sensorica, the things that happen, and yeah, go on. Let's go.
No, okay, I was muted. Yeah, for my check-in, thanks, Vinny, for that overview and introduction. Things to come. I'm feeling good, like any Friday. Start my day slow with this gathering before I kick into higher gear. In terms of work, yeah, we're trying to understand 2024 with because we operate within the larger ecosystem, right? And things are moving very rapidly in the Western world. These developments catalyze some activities within the fourth sector P2P economy. So trying to understand how to position ourselves for the storm that it seems to be gathering around. Yeah, so we're kind of I'm a little bit in the fog of the action, let's say, nowadays.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I feel that I'm in the fog of the action of some dynamics that are not still full blown yet, right? That I was really involved in 2023, but that's typical of New Year's, right? Like in January and February, you're just restarting the engines, you know, and you want to restart the engine, but sometimes with a different flow, with a different exploring different perspectives.
Yeah.
So you kind of caught yourself in this fog in the action things that you just shared. So I totally understand what you're saying, because I feel the same when it comes to other things that I'm directly involved or it didn't start yet because of the car. Here in Brazil is because of the carnival. Like things only start to happen after, you know.
The year starts after the carnival.
Yes. So here but you know, but the world is a crazy part of things happening at the same time. As we know, we are very informed about all things that are happening, you know, the wars, the craziness, you know, the breaking down of any type of rationality when it comes to societies that we know. So yeah.
Well, there's moments where things are advancing in a linear fashion, right? And you can see ahead, and everybody is focused ahead. So you have present coordination, but also you can correlate futures, right? Because people know where they're going. There are times where almost everybody you have times where almost everybody is like expecting something to happen. So then people, they stop planning and they start like trying to understand and make sense of it and see how they can position themselves. So kind of in this chaotic period that I feel, right? Anyway, because everybody talks about 2024 and the election year in the United States, we see that politics is going crazy, the economy is going crazy in some sense, and the clash between the crypto world and the governments is in some way intensifying. Europe is boiling, multiple fires in Europe. Brussels is literally burning. So yeah, so it's a little bit crazy. So you don't have the ability to predict or project too much in the future and to correlate action with other people around, because everybody's kind of going everywhere. So creates this kind of fog.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chibi. But that said, I feel a little bit different from you, maybe because of the way that I relate to peer-to-peer, or the way that I see the potentiality, the potential and the potentiality of being this peer-to-peer native guy that I am, culturally speaking. So I really appreciate, I really value all the peer-to-peer micro narratives that I co-create with others. So I can feel in these micro narratives the capability to have agency, you know? So even if in the macro, things are in turmoil in the macro, they are, I can swift myself between spaces, between conversations, and navigate between fixtures and fractures with others in a sense that gives me the sense of agency. I'm having agency. So yeah, I can see these macro fogs that you're talking about, these macro narratives coming from, nation state, corporations, geopolitical wars, things like that. But at the same time, as I'm paired, right? Like I'm paired with the other people's, a lot of pairing that I do with other folks in different contexts, different social worlds, different things that are happening. It gives me the sense, as a net weaver, right? It gives me the sense of agency, that things are happening, because it's not, it's a story, is a story that is being told by me and the other person that I'm paired with in a peer-to-peer way, in a very complex peer-to-peer way. So I can sense some grounding for that in echo-localization of the things that we're doing, even within this giant, massive macro narrative, things that are happening between nation states, the wars and all the traditional craziness coming from politics and things like that. So I'm just highlighting that because I totally understand what you're saying, but in my case, I because of the way that I live my life and because of the way that I'm connected with people in a such open way, in a such complex human way, I feel that I can put both of my 2 feet on the ground and feel the ground, right? And so that give me cohesion, wariness. I'm always I feel alive. I think that the word that I'm trying to, and I think that this correlates totally with correlates totally with what we have been doing here for almost 2 years and a half now in our weekly touchdowns here. This is something that has a direct relationship with my health, and it's the way that once I'm nurturing my health this way that I just described, I can think about new ways to generate wealth, right? So that's why you guys know that I'm always sharing new things. I'm always doing things. So I think that speaks directly with what you're talking about, Sidi.
Mhm. Yeah. So in this context, how are we gonna go ahead with what you just presented before? As mentioned, Gather Town.
Yeah.
With environments.
Once more, if I had any if I was, let's say, if I had this more conventional take of things that usually people has around, any aspect of their lives, like depending on government, depending on nation state economics or whatever, I would be asking you guys, hey guys, let's do this for real, right? Let's do in a teamwork way. Let's organize. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to, throw out my precious time that I have, things that I can be earning money or to pay my bills. You know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
that's not the way that, at least for me, things should happen, right? Because I still understand that our friendly, extremely empathic, non-bullshittable weekly touchdown here, the RWI thing that we're doing, it's very organic, it's very peer-to-peer, complex driven, like the term that I have been talking about, the complexity doing dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel to be that we already, we already are setting up things in this type of flow, right? Like the natural attraction of the work that Lauren has been doing, with the work that Stefan has been doing with Infusion Labs, for instance, So that natural attraction between them as peers is already making things move, even if it a little bit slowly, but organically is moving. So that is already happening. What I'm talking about is for us to set camp, the RWI touchdown, set camp in the Gather Town, Infusion Lab Gather Town, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're going to set camp there. We're going to do some experimentations there.
Oh, Kim is
Stefan.
already there. I just wanted to know.
Oh, Kim, yeah. Hey, Kimberly, be very welcome.
He's muted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I said hello. I'm flat on my back, so I'm gonna keep my camera off. I'm on my bed, but thanks for the invite. I'll listen. Yes. I'll listen and get up to speed.
Yeah, that's a very usual. That's a very common, usual thing. People comes, just wake up like TB from the bed and hey guys, I'm here. So
yeah, I was exactly in your position when we started. Now I'm having my coffee. Yeah, so this is a relaxed conversation. We're just we're still defining 2024, and I'm happy that you came. If you want to jump in and talk about your stuff, or if you just ask some questions and you want us to reflect on it while you're listening, we can talk about your projects of habitation, education, all that stuff.
Yeah, that the other night you really opened my mind up about this idea I've got for something I want to return to in Cambodia, and what you're talking about with property rights, because I always thought with this thing to sell to expats, it's an idea of a village. Cambodia is very in need of skills training. This idea of effectively an apartment complex sitting over the top of a learning centre, quite at scale. But I had to go up because you can only give the foreigners soft title. But then TB started to talk about these other ways of thinking about property rights and stuff like that. And I went, wow, I could do something completely different and not need to go up in the air. Like, just, yeah, it was really interesting. Opened my mind up.
Yeah,
But
feel free to talk a little bit if you want to better introduce yourself, Kimberly.
yeah, okay. So
Are you friends with TB? Are you in Sensoricas? You have part. Are you the peer? A peer that is within doing some work.
It comes from seeds. It comes from seeds. I told you before.
Oh yes, seeds.
Yeah, seeds.
Yeah.
well, kind of. I spent quite a few months going to every seeds meeting and trying to I find at the moment seeds is very inwardly focused. You know, they're very focused on that one token and trying to fix it. I was trying to get them to look outwards and say, okay, let's start to do some positive things. So just as background, I founded a non-profit in Singapore, and originally our structure was supposed to be we were supported by our own online travel agency, wanting to support permaculture projects. Then we obviously had the pandemic, and that changed a few things. Then I went through a whole bunch of things with different DAOs, Refi DAO, Hypha and Seeds, Felipe and the Gaia Network, Jan, it goes on and on. Just it's a very fragmented regenerative space at the moment. But yeah, so we've got a little ecosystem of regenerative projects that we want to partner with. So in Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, back to Cambodia, but then it's kind of spreads wider through Gaia. They've got a lot of their own projects. And I think I'm coming more and more to grips with what the Gaia tokens mean. But I'm a big fan also of Will Ruddock's work in grassroots economics, of these really localized tokens that aren't seeking to replace money but sit alongside money, just as that idea of just moving transactional movements through a local economy. How can we remove ourselves from this crazy export consumption driven model that doesn't help anyone, just the elites. So yeah, and then I met. Sorry, I met Timmy a couple of times.
Just one thing. I'm just curious, really. I've been following Seeds for a whole long time, and because I know that ultimately Rieki is not so present, for instance, in the Seeds ecosystem, in this DAO collaboratory thing that you're doing, as he was in the beginning. And at the same time, when TB talked that someone from Seeds was coming, I thought that you talked about Hakeem. Hakeem is a very present figure in the co-creation of Seeds. And I didn't hear that you talked about Kimberly, so forgive me if I misled myself here. So we already having Stefan coming. Hey, Stefan, my friend, you're very welcome.
Greetings, welcome. Hi.
Hello, Stefan.
Let me just check. You hearing me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. So maybe since Kimberly is new here, I can set a bit the stage for him for let's say a bit of brainstorming. So from what I understand, he's looking at these tokenomics DAOs, but he's really into living spaces, education spaces, experiences, from what I understand, and you will correct me. And I brought him to a point where I said, let's think about property, real estate. Let's think about fixed assets in a different way, so that they could be part of a more fluid, more dynamic, more open economic system. So fixed assets could provide better access to people. When you have let's say I go and buy a condo in Mexico, okay? A lot of Canadians go to Mexico for the winter, and that's a fixed asset, but most of the time I'm not there. So I'm just locking in the property for my personal use 2 weeks per year, you know. Then you have these sharing models where you buy access time, right? So you know, they have these arrangements where people buy a piece of their property and they arrange you know, to use it like two months per year, 2 months per year or 1 month per year. And so it's a it's a sort of a low cost place. They used to do that a lot in Mexico. There were some problems, some scams involved in these kind of things. It's called time sharing, something like that. So an asset is divided into different portions of time sharing, and so there's a bunch of people that could use this property. But it's still the idea of private property, right? And so I you know, the whole discussion here was, you know, what does it mean to create local experiences, you know, if we stop thinking about property rights, okay, which are about use, okay, rights of use. What if we think about you know, creating experiences, living experiences, you know, so you can have a roof, you can have some learning experiences, you can have some spiritual experiences, like a sort of an ecosystem of experiences, and focus on creating experiences for people, and focus on mechanisms that guarantee access according to some rules, right? So then you're not just because one of the negative aspects of private property is that if I do own something in Mexico, I always have to go back to the same place. You know, I can't move around. I can't decide that next year I'm going to go to this other village because they're doing some pottery and I'm interested in pottery and I want to learn how to make pottery and how to, I don't know, paint the pots and whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I can't move around. So I'm kind of locking myself into one particular type of experience, which may be convenient for some people, but you know, it cuts you off some other arrangements that you can have while in Mexico. So how can we make these things more fluid so that we can allow people to kind of move from one place to another, from one set of experiences to another? What is the new forms of property that exist? Okay, we spoke about non-dominium form of property, like the Bitcoin network. And also, when we think about flows of people and resources, we always think about money that provide access, you know, but there's so many other new ways of providing access to stuff. And we see that in the Web3 sphere, people are playing with different types of tokens that are non-monetary, you know, utility tokens, governance tokens, entitlement tokens. So you know, new forms of property, new means of accessing stuff, to make sort of this kind of experiences more fluid. And we think about that from a peer-to-peer perspective. And Vinny, that was my introduction, Vinny, to kind of give you an overview of, you know, the thinking space here. And you know a lot of people in Brazil because you've moved from one place to another. Like Vinny is the perfect nomad for this kind of stuff. Vinny goes to one village here, goes to another community there, and and I thought that you would be the perfect guy to, you know, not to pin down an economic model, but maybe just to share your experience and the value that you can extract from having that freedom of movement, and from being able to create relationships using these new social protocols, right? Peer-to-peer protocols, and enrich yourself from going to one place to another, and enrich one place by bringing stuff from other places, whatever, you know, just talk about the experiences and because we're kind of just trapped into this capitalist dogma where we go somewhere and we pay for a service, you know, and that's our life, that's our experience, is driven by transactions and services, rather than being driven by, I don't know, just you know, shared experiences with people and relationships that are not necessarily heavy in identity. You're not joining a cult. You're not joining a tribe. You're just floating around this peer-to-peer space, right? So just to build the imaginary of what would be this kind of lifestyle and culture, right? And what are the positive side of it?
Wow, Tibi, that was huge. Thanks for that, man. Really good. You painted in a way that makes it very easy for me to make some commentary around. But I don't want to capture the rapture here, capture the flow of the potential interactions between us. And but only in that sense, Kimberly, I will only share one thing. Since 2014, we have been co-creating human-driven experiences throughout Brazil, where the economic model, the economics is not direct related to fiat money or even crypto, right? And we're really enhancing our capabilities to aggregate, to do things together, to co-create things, using one of the most powerful social technologies that our species has, that is empathy. So in that sense, we have been doing, we started an experience called Gloco. Gloco is the, you know, the concept of Gloco. I think that if you're not aware of, we can talk about that. Gloco Experimentation Station for Open Sciences and Peer-to-Peer Social Technologies. We call it E2GLATS. E2GLATS. So what are the type of things that we're doing here? People open their houses, their houses, to nest people that are coming from all places, just to get acquainted, just to get humanly acquainted, you know, to have some proximity to someone that is not part of your bubble or your logic of life, and people just welcome them in their houses, and they have experience that can last a day, a weekend, even a month, and the way and they feel compelled to, you know, people that are coming and going to this. We call it in Portuguese experimentas, experiences places, like experimentas. So people goes to these experimentas throughout Brazil, and they have this very human-like, you know, FaceTime. It's not FaceTime for iPhone, okay? FaceTime, like you're really living the life that the people that open the home and the house for you, and you're just in a very complex way, because we're complex beings. You're just interacting and you're sharing your experiences. You're talking about things that you're exploring, and vice versa. You get to know the people from that locality, you know, from that culture and that place, that region in Brazil. So this has been happening since 2014, so 10 years now. And it doesn't have any type of relationship with any economic model, nothing like that. It's just to exercise our capability to be together, you know, to generate interdependence between us, to generate conviviality. Because if you ask me what is the most scarce things that we have in societies at large, not only here in Brazil, is the capability to be together, to really interact, to have this conviviality stream, you know, this peer-to-peer conviviality stream of things. That's very scarce, right? Because we became very bubbled up, especially with the Web2 algorithms, is bubbling us up, and we're extremely individualistic, extremely consumeristic. But where is our humanity, our capability to reflect, to make any type of reflexivity between us, you know, like a mirroring to mirror us ourselves, and found some grounding in our differences, our cultural differences, not to, you know, to generate, not to generate more to be a part of ourselves, you know, to generate instances of I'm here and you're there, the logic of me versus you, right? So we have been doing this for ages now, and TB is aware of that. That's why he contextualized it and put me in the equation of his contextualization. So and yeah, that's pretty much it, TB. I don't want to hijack the conversation here. Yeah.
Well, that's yeah, that's we can look at that as the model on the catwalk, which is like a sort of a fringe, crazy way of living together, and then you, Kimberly, may think about, well, how can I bring that into a more you know, a more mainstream setup, right? How do I make it a reality in the world that you live in? There's a lot of insights there, right? But I understand that you probably face some issues. So when you talk about expatriates, you know, you talk about people from Europe going to retire in Cambodia, and these people, you know, they're probably focused on having good times, sticking with one another from, you know, from their own, I don't know, community. So French people hang out with French people, and German people hang out with German people, with some mixing, and they go to tango and restaurants and stuff like that. So what we have here with the expats is this kind of, not tourism, but a relocation that is done in a way where there is no mixity, and there is no real contribution other than monetary to the local economy. You know, for example, not too many of these people will engage in in the local society, you know, to take care of, I don't know, kids, or take care of and, you know, get involved in non-profit organizations or the social affairs. So so there, you know, the way I see it is some type of, you know, self-oriented kind of service or advantage, going there because of physical environment. There is sun, there's good food, and there are good services, you know, for expats. So you know, so that's a sort of the caricature of the mainstream that I see with these kind of people movements. But then you know, that's purely service oriented. You know, these guys, they have some savings, and they pour their money into these countries, and the countries are happy because they're getting this money. It's purely transactional, and there's no really mixing, right? So Vinny is talking about something.
Yeah, just to give you background with this, thing came from pre-COVID when I was in Cambodia. We were working on a low-cost housing fund with a guy that was on the board of PROSAC. PROSAC was the second largest financial institution in Cambodia. And this was this way of, okay, you hit a wall because things happen when the microfinance thing, the government put a cap on interest rates. But the idea of that expat, you know, like trying to sell apartments to fund this thing, it really also came from observation here of this. Like we build retirement. I'm in Australia just at the moment, but we build these retirement villages of 300 units where people just go to die. So this was the transaction, for want of a better word, wasn't just about I'm buying this unit. It was money going into a low-cost housing fund, money going into different initiatives. So, and also, yeah, they would go and be the teachers there. So it's not. So it was a different thing to retirement. Is just because you've reached this age, you've lived in that old financial world, you've accumulated some money. You don't need to just stop and wait to die. You can live almost like a new phase of your life. And because what you talked about, because there was always this element of still wanting to return to approaching a village, a sustainable village, but reflecting also on Cambodian culture. You can't just homogeneously say, I'm going to put this here and then go to the next country and do it again. Every country has its own different cultural things. But the interesting thing, by not thinking about selling a soft title apartment, but actually making it something completely different by bringing it down to the ground, is that they will be just in a village. Would be a multicultural village, not this different places. So yeah. Yes, but maybe rather than that model, what I'd like to throw into the mix is my friend Quako in Ghana, that's Dream Village. So he's, just to give you background, he's an Indigenous man. His tribal lands is about 3,000 hectares. There's 3 sites there, but he's wanting to build, and he's already started, it's an education system plus a regenerative village. So the end result would be a 200 student per year, 200 student accommodation and teaching regenerative agriculture but other skills, and 160 regenerative acres and plots. And the only, be it payment on those lots, is $200 US a year. That's all you need to find to get your plot here. So maybe rather than thinking about that expat model, it's probably more interesting to talk about, because that's who his view is, whoever wants to come and live this life. So this is what I was saying the other day to me, is that we've got these projects where we can actually take these ideas and experiment in these places. I don't have the answers. It's more, here's a space, it can be beautiful, what can we do in it, is where I start from. I don't have any answers. It's just like, this is what we want to do, like more from a physical space.
Yeah. What's interesting also in France, they have, I don't know if they have a critical mass of these kind of spaces, but they have enough of them. And then there's one organization that rised up and said, I'm gonna create an experience for people going from one place to another. So they created this path of transition, they call it. And so you have a map, you can take the car, and they propose an itinerary for you. So places are around education, permaculture, for example. So you can spend 2-3 days a week there and practice with them and learn with them. Oh, there's a glitch. Hello?
Yeah, you just froze for
you
a brief
just
second.
Okay, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so the arrangement is, you can give us a bit of money and you have to contribute to activities. So you go from a space of co-living where people have bought like an ancient small village, abandoned village, and now they're setting up different families and they live together, to a local farm, to an eco village, to a place where people learn permaculture. So the whole idea here is that rather than just speaking of one place, what happened in France was this with this gathering of all these different places, and this interface with the public, right, as a path through this kind of system of transition, and they see it as seeds of new ways, new experiences, new ways of living together, new economic models. So they enrich themselves and they enrich the population. Yeah, so this is an interesting model. I think you could look into because it has that diversity. It has that diversity and complementarity among all these places. And so the first layer of federation happened at this interface with the public. Let's create a map and some type of mechanism for people to even get their tickets and do their scheduling with these places. So plan for their trip, right? I'll be there on that date, and I'll move there on the other date, and everybody knows. So these kind of coordination mechanisms, but who knows what else will emerge on top of this platform that already exists, right?
I was spending time with, I've done a bit of time with, they call it co-fundico, but it's called co-creation of eco-funding systems for regeneration. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. But they talk about people as either being trees or birds. So you're either rooted in a place or you're that bird that wants to travel around. And what I'm struggling to reconcile, again, going back to Cambodia, is they have this really strong attachment to property, given what happened, and they're all kind of thrown out of their properties, etc. They have their property rights very strong to them. And I wonder how you could overcome that. But yeah, this idea of a mix in a village of places people can permanently stay versus others that can move around. And Gaia seems to do that through this idea of a mix, some rentals, some, but it's still, as you said, to be still in that property rights mode, still stuck in something traditional.
Yeah, you see, what I see out there, Kimberly, is something more, do you know Creative Commons? The Creative Commons ecology of how you can stretch intellectual rights within type of content. I see something like that related to what you guys are talking to, like a Creative Commons approach, but it's still in the ethos, and it's still within the status quo of the societies as we know it, right? There's nothing really disruptive in this way, because it still runs through fiat money, through economic models related to fiat money, or even crypto, right? That it still is very attached to the global economy, global macroeconomy, it's still attached to fiat money and things like that. So I really don't see nothing groundbreaking this way. There's a huge experimentation that has been running for decades in Portugal called Tamera. Do you know Tamera? Have you heard about Tamera? Yes, it's Tamera, 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 Tamera. And Tamera is the precursor of what Seeds wants to become. They have been running this since the 70s and the 80s of the last century. And they still are very dependent on fiat money, and they are not trying to be kidnapped, let's put it this way, through this type of crypto economics that is running around. Like they're very critical about it. But they're open to the so-called refi, right? Regenerative finance. They're open, they're trying to do some experimentations around it. And they by themselves, they are very aware and wary of this ownership things, because in order for them to establish in this region, south of Portugal, if I'm not wrong here, they actually they depended on the empathy of the owners of the lands that they are actually running the experimentation now for decades, and they didn't have any type of direct ownership of the land through ages, like decades. And but it was so, just for you guys to understand what I'm saying, Charles Eisenstein was there and he gave some credence and visibility to the experimentation they were doing. He was there like some years ago. I think it was before COVID. And they are very resilient. They're already in the second to the third generation of people that are living this way, right? But that said, they're very hyper local. They're extremely bioregional. And for me, the element that is disruptive, even comparing with Tamara, is the glocality piece part of it. Like, how can we co-create a global experimentation around housing, around peer-to-peer mobility, around sovereign food? Like, how can we create this superstructure around this? That's the main experimentation that I've been doing for years now through E2GLATS, this global experimentation station that I was talking with you guys. So that's my 2 cents just to add to the conversation. But it's going to be nice to hear Stefan. Stefan has a very interesting work around complexity, and it would be nice to hear you, my friend. Go on.
Yeah, I was really, thanks. I'm listening and I was just getting up to speed with everything you're saying. It's really interesting. And like, I just put a couple of notes because I think trust is a big part of this, and like whose needs get met. Like, if you talk about seniors and like, say I have a village or an area with some land and some bits here, there and everywhere, and I've got the current model is a bit like, well, we can knock all that down, we put this 300 apartment development in there, right? We can trust it'll be stable. It'll be this idea of blocking it down, this kind of economic model. But like you're talking about another kind of model. But the trouble is they'll invest all the money to build all of that. Like the needs of what it takes to make the building happen gets prioritized. No one's going to question how much the developer gets paid for his cement and all the other things. And when it gets moved over to, say you do a village like you're talking about, where your people are more integrated, that peer-to-peer piece there, the quality of that peer-to-peer piece is, you have to experience it to really get it, right? But at the same time, that peer-to-peer network, it can't be just like, we don't build this expensive complex, we do this other thing, and it's seen purely in terms of savings. It's like, it's going to work and be stable and be trusted if a peer-to-peer network is resourced to make that possible. It's not like you can say the developer gets paid to put in 300 unit seniors home, and the peer-to-peer network also needs to be funded. The value for that should be seen in the same way that the value for the bricks and mortar gated community is put in, and because obviously, like all these things, and I think that's why there's a big issue around bad actors that we're quite conscious of, because the peer-to-peer network, you're building up a trust, right? Like, it takes one instance where bad actors go and disrupt things, and that starts to diminish the the value proposition becomes tarnished, right? So we want to resource, but overall it's actually more efficient, more effective, a better quality experience, right? But the trouble is the economics, we want to be well, I'm not saying this is with us, but generally speaking, the economics becomes like, if it goes from the development to this more experienced thing and we want to scale it, people will focus on the economic savings. So you're back to like, what we're offering, and we're talking about experience and all these other things, but then it can be branded in terms of, well, you didn't have to build that building. Does that make sense? Because you could maybe repurpose stuff locally. And so how can that brand value, that experience value, a bit like what Apple's done, right? Apple's basically created the sense that, and like you look, it's completely transformed the whole computer industry in the sense that they all changed the way that they present themselves. Microsoft, it used to all be what freebies you got, what extras you got. Like, how do we talk about trust, and how can you build in the resources for these different types of value propositions, right? And I think that's kind of what I think you're trying to do, because we're in this catch-22, whereas at the moment they talk in terms of monetary investment, and then the value of having a gated community, which basically means everyone knows that maybe no criminals can get in, or I don't know. You just kill every option, right? But you also kill the people in there. They can die in safety. That's the irony, right? And you can't deny that, right? That having a gated community will do that. So doing something else, it does present some other. If you don't actually have peer-to-peer dialogue, and you just literally have people plunked into a community, which is not what we're saying, but it doesn't happen by accident. You know what I mean? It happens. There's a quality. Well, that's what we've been talking about actually with our network of networks, and how can you see inside that complexity to make sure that a real value proposition, and also a value when value has been eroded, right? When you can spot a situation where it's like, this isn't a peer-to-peer network, this is a subverted opportunity space, and be able to sort of, and I don't know whether the word police that is the right term, but anyway, that's something that comes up for me. I think it's interesting.
I guess I have something to add here. I guess one key concept here is that there are types of value that emerge at the higher level. So if we think about one particular community, one particular arrangement, one village, one gated community, one building, you know, there is some type of value that could be generated so that people can value that sort of experience tied to that location. But then the higher level appears when you have a variety of these things that are hooked together. And when we're talking about the peer-to-peer vision of this kind of stuff, you know, we're talking about that level where you have an integration of these spaces, and you have the value proposition becomes a life experience, which is made out of different experiences that you can have in different locations. And the key here is the facilitation of that movement, right? Providing access, providing information, providing the ability to see, to plan, you know, for people, and all that. That is sort of the interface with this network of experiences. So yeah, so I just want to point that out, is that, you know, we can think about one location and how can make it nice, and how can we generate some interesting experiences, and at that level we're constrained in terms of economic models, experience that we can provide. But there is another thing to speak about an ecosystem, right? And as we're moving into the peer-to-peer era, like if you look at blockchain and internet, what is it about? This is about connecting. Okay, so let's say the blockchain as an infrastructure doesn't make sense for one company, you know. So let's say, okay, I'm I don't know, McDonald's, and I'm going to implement blockchain to run my company. It makes no sense. Okay, because the value of blockchain as technology is to be able to interface with anything you don't trust. So it's a technology, inter-organizational technology, right? So technology to federate organizations into something larger. That's the peer-to-peer. In between. Okay, so for some reason I'm just can you hear me?
We lost you a little bit when you're talking about the in-betweenness of peer-to-peer.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So when we talk about peer-to-peer, we always talk about a larger scale, and we always talk about connectivity of different entities that can maintain some you know, relations of complementarity and synergy. And the peer-to-peer infrastructure is that thing that ties all these stuff together, right? So yeah, capitalism is more simple than that. You know, it's organizational focused, and then you have the market that kind of magically works, right? the invisible hand and all that. You have a space for these entities to interact with each other. If you want to do accounting in capitalist models, you do from the firm out. You look at the firm, and then you look at the supply chain and the distribution. If you do accounting in the peer-to-peer way, in like Sensorica is doing with the NRP, well, you consider the whole network as one, right? So you see that the perspective changes here, and if you want to have a peer-to-peer discussion about living spaces and educational spaces, well, that discussion has to be at that level, right? And Le Chemin de Transition in France is a platform response to that. Okay, it's not a peer-to-peer response, it's an Uber-like response. It's a platform. Some people created a platform, something that sits on a server, where you can look at the map and see who's there and who's doing what, and schedule your trip, and some transactional capabilities. You know, pay whatever you have to pay at every place. The peer-to-peer response to that would be, I don't know, some Web3 coordination. Every one of these communities runs a node, and they issue, I don't know, NFTs as tickets, and maybe some governance tokens and some credentials. So you go into a community, you present your credentials, you gain more credentials if you learn something in that community. So that allows you to go to another community, and so on and so forth, without having a platform owned by somebody, orchestrated by some centralized entity, as the tissue. But that's the thing, it's yeah. So I don't think we can do justice to a peer-to-peer discussion of this stuff if we just focus in one place. I think the vision has to be, connecting these different places that can enter in a complementary relationship, so sort of a synergy, and building this infrastructure for tie them up together and federating all that.
Chibi, I don't know if you guys are seeing. I'm trying to share my
yeah, we see. Yeah.
In the E2 Glads ecosystem, we done some years ago a study of. Oh, wait a minute. This is this is another thing. Wait a minute. Let me see. Did it open there? Because it's relatively unstable.
We can see your desktop. Yes.
Yes. Wait a minute. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to share this because my web access is a little bit unstable here. But we've done some studies, some explorations around in-betweeners, to understand if we're going to come up with new disruptive framings of how can we make more permanent, some housing dynamics, some peer-to-peer mobility dynamics, open knowledge dynamics that is not related to the economic model of knowledge that is out there, where you pay for everything, fiat money, to access it. We started to do some. We went to active inferencing to do some work with active inferencing communities a while ago, and we started to have some insights around this in-betweeners dynamics. This complexity doing between peers, between people with different perspectives, different cultures, different languages, and we boiled down to basically 3 dynamics of in-betweeners that happens between people, and I just want to share with you guys our takes on this. Let me see if I can do this now. If it's better. My internet connection here. Wait just a sec. I shared a video, a rare video about E2 Glads in the chat. You guys can see that later. Okay. Let me see if it is it opening now?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Are you guys seeing something? Anything? Let me see if it goes now.
Yep, now is preparing to share something. Let's see. It's loading, it's loading.
Yes.
Yep, yeah, I
Okay.
see this graphic.
So, yeah, but it's popping up, popping in, right?
No, it's okay.
So
Attraction.
yeah, we sketched down to these three types of in-betweeners. After having conversation with hundreds of people coming from all places, not only Brazil, but coming from North America, coming from Africa, coming from Europe, we boiled down to this graphic here that I can't. It's impossible for you guys to see it because my internet
You can just
connection.
take a screen capture, save it as a picture, and
Yeah. It's here. It's attraction. It's
yeah.
capture and closeness. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
So when we have this is looking peer-to-peer to be with the complex doing lenses, okay? Complexity doing lenses.
Yeah.
We understand, and here's not only two humans, we're talking about other species too, but let's focus on human, on our species here. So when it has an attraction, you have a field of a very rich field of possibilities where nothing is really captured, right? When it's in the traction, in the initial attraction dynamics, the in between, the attraction by dynamics of the in between is between peers. So you have a huge space of possibilities. The discovery space is very huge here. Discovery space, and then once both peers or of this in-betweeners, interactive in-betweeners dynamics start to see things that is really valuable, you know, for each other. It started unconsciously or not unconsciously. You start to do some capturing dynamics. You start to capture things like but the type of capture here is not ownership, okay? It's like I want to be close to it. You try to capture it in the sense that it doesn't stay out of your focus. It doesn't stay out of your interest in daily basis. So it's type of a capturing dynamics of, but in a sense to be, you know, to follow something, you know, to be close to it. And so it starts a capturing dynamics in this sense. Oh, once more, we did this with these active inferencing communities that study this. Okay, so once that once that establishes, we start to see different types of closeness between different, you know, structural captures that start to happen between peers and between different contexts. We call it closeness. And this closeness is when we start to see some tissue, some membrane between the peers or between whatever you want to, you know, to weave or to net weave or to give birth to. It can be a housing dynamics, it can be a peer-to-peer mobility dynamics, it can be anything. And we start to see that this type of tissuing, the net weaving of this type of tissuing between the peers, between different contexts, between different peoples, just to sustain, you know, sustain that gives birth to this global superstructure. So we were able to see that this three-phase dynamics, interactive three-phase dynamics between in this in-betweenness between the peers has this three-phase thing. So and when established the closeness, established the tissuing, you know, the membrane between these peers that are very interesting to see that remaining as a reality for others, you know, just know that it exists, right? We can see that that global superstructure becomes more permanent. It becomes more permanent. It's not it's not so, let's say, um, it has the capability to it gains some resilience, it gains some capability to network sustain itself, netweave sustain itself through time, right? So there's a lot of work that we've done around this. I'm just sharing the synthesis of what we've been exploring through E2GLADS through the years. And this was a very interesting, because this highlighted how we can come up with new ways, you know, to attach ourselves, that it doesn't depend of a fiat-driven or even a crypto-driven framework to things to be more, to things to exist in the so-called real world. So that's basically what I just want to share.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and Stefan, you want to talk? You want to say something, my friend? You're with your virtual hand.
Oh yeah,
up.
oh yeah. But yeah, I was just interested in. I like what you're saying there. It's interesting how this idea of things starting to be held together. I'm just curious how to frame this as well. If I was to use that Bruno Latour shift from globe to like more inhabited habitats. So I think, because I like what you're doing, I think you're actually getting more into that here. Like you're using the global because that's the kind of the language we tend to use, but I think this is actually getting more into that kind of language of, because global is you only see the globe, right? We never see the globe. That's why we got flat earthers. You only see the globe from space, some imagined space view, right? But what you're essentially doing is you're sort of having different kinds of Gaia, different kinds. When you say the G could be different types of watershed, different types of larger inhabited, different kinds of habitats or in which local stuff is happening. But the thing, the between stuff is really key. I like that. I'm really curious if there's a way to, I feel like you're bringing global into something which is, there's an in-between global and local, which is kind of lived in a way, right? It is what it is. Like what is, and I like also when you put the closedness, I like that nest because it still doesn't, it's not trapped. Stuff will still escape, you know what I mean? It's not like there's no way out. It's just, there's a lot of ways in, which is actually a bit different. We tend to like put the lid on the bottle, right? And everything's stuck inside. So look, stuff can come out either end, but there's enough closeness to make a lot of stuff happen in between. That's a little bit of a different way of thinking. Because normally we bottle the ends rather than try and work on how to make the richness of the middle. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool actually.
Yeah, can you share this picture, Vinny, on Discord somewhere with either Tao Dao or Sensorica?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, the in-betweeners, it's sometimes it's it's non-tangible. It's the cultural, it's values. So if you look at Chemin de la Transition, right? This thing in France that ties all these places together, which is one layer, right? Already in the title, you can see it. Okay, transition. So these are people that share a belief that the world is in transition, that we must transition, right? So there's always there's already sort of an identity that emerges there, okay? That makes that tissue, that in between us, between all these places. Why are they not just separate places? What is that federates that? What is that makes people see them as more than just a number of spaces, right? So there's this identity of transition. There's a need to transit, to go somewhere else, to discover, to explore, different models. And so, yeah, so there's already a fringe culture around that makes that tissue. And then the web service itself, it's an infrastructural component, right? It provides you maps for orientation, tools for coordination and planning, some transactional tools. So this is very tangible in between us, right? So yeah. Then the capturing, I don't know, because that's what probably that creates the attraction once you realize that.
Just to frame it again so you guys have a more clear understanding of what you're seeing here. What we labeled as the traction phase is when the different elements coming from different peers, they are to interact, right? You're being attracted to interact with whatever, another peer, a context, right? But that interaction is not pre-designed, you know, like you have in the participation modes. In the participation modes, everything is pre-designed. You have a time to talk, a time to vote, a time to express yourself, a time to, you know, everything is very coded,
Yeah.
very coded. It's very protocol coded oriented way. When you're in this interaction, this openness, all possible. This is you're seeing here in between. This is a discovery space. You see?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of discovery here. A lot of and there's lots of different types of discovery. It's not only one type. It's different types of discovery for each peer that is attracted to whatever you're doing here. It can be a value proposal of a project, of an open initiative. It can be Sensóricas, for instance, right? So they're attracted to it, but it's not real. You don't have a high resolution here. It's a real open space, just to, you know, touch the elephant. Like, let me touch the elephant and see what's happening here. It's not rationalized here, T. You're not rationalizing here, and then you suddenly you feel you don't feel the time passing, and suddenly you already, let's say, capturing it in a very instinctively or intuitively way. You're trying to grasp it, you know. So you're interacting with those folks that resonates with you, that is mirroring you, you're interesting. So that's the type of capturing that we're talking here. So it's not so open anymore. It's so open, but you see, it's more funneled. And in that sense, you still have a huge discovery space of things that be co-created, but it's more funneled. And that's like you're in the womb, you know, as a creature that is coming alive. You're starting to see features of the fetus, of the being that is being conceived, right? It's something like a womb, right? And then it's interesting that when you establish the capability to sustain whatever you want to sustain with the other or the others, establish a weaving capability that it becomes more thin, it becomes more close, but it's still open, right? It's not closed, it's still open. And this type of tissuing, this glocal tissuing, that gives birth to this glocal superstructures that I've been talking about for ages, TD, with you. So I never went down in the rabbit hole to share these things because you know, it needs a little bit, like infusion labs or infusion space coming from Stefan. It needs some preparation in order for you to understand what the hell you guys are talking about, right? So yeah, but that's pretty much it. And this is not something artificial. This is not something lab. It's not being done by lab. You know, this is something very organic, very interactive, very emergent. This is something that we understood that happens with not only any human being, that happens with any expression of life, right? So And we put it, we put this type of graphic because we find it that the most simple thing is the most complex, right? So this is what was the most simple thing that we could come up with to talk about complexity, and at the same time, how do you do things within or in between complexities and complexity itself. That's the type of peer-to-peer TV that I've been talking about for ages, and we'll be experimenting here in Brazil through E2Glass. Yeah, that's basically it. And that's the type of thing that give birth to this experimentas, throughout Brazil, and gave birth to E2C token, as you know it, or give birth to the type of occupation that Braz is doing in Mato Grosso. So yeah, that is sustainable. But it seems for folks that are totally captured by the actual ethos that we live in, status quo that we live in, that this seems extremely fringe or extremely fragile. But I can assure for you guys that it's extremely resilient, because it has been happening for 10 years now, almost. Yeah, that's it.
And one of the other nice things about it is it's, which I've been trying to think, is it's fairly first principles. Like some of these pressures to be, sometimes the resilience in that, there's a high level idea of resilience, this idea that I've got this master plan, and then there can just be the resilience of having a low level set of principles. I mean, the free energy principles like that. I mean, it is what it is, right? The path of least action in physics is just a principle, right? So it just applies and then you use it. Whereas if you have this, like the resilience of capitalism or communism, these high level conceptual, they're fragile because they're too predicated on a whole load of assumptions, So what you're trying to do there is you're basically sort of trying to give a sense of the kind of dynamics between two sides, So you could also adapt those a little bit to context. And I've just put in the chat here about Bruno Latour. I've sort of shared him again, and I think he made some good points about global. Sort of what would happen if basically the sort of stuff that he might say would well, in terms of the language, he's passed away now, right? So I'm just putting, but it's very aligned. So I think your version of global is more like this kind of Gaia version, more like a lived kind of in-betweenness. I think it's not a surprise that you've come up with in-betweenness, because in-betweenness is basically what he's saying is like, in between, we've got, people talk about, you've got the Earth with all the space around it, and people talk about the globe. We say, okay, we've got the globe, start in the middle, and you go out 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, 5,000 miles, 8,000 miles, it's all dead, 9,000 miles, then you get 30 miles of life, and then it's dead again. You basically got a thin skin of life around the planet, right? Which literally goes 8,000, I don't know how many, 5,000 miles to the core, and it's all dead, right? So really, we're living inside that betweenness, between the magma of the Earth and the deadness of the upper atmosphere, right? And that's the same with what you're talking about here in a way. You're talking about what other things are possible between people. And that's, anyway, I think there's something important to, because I've got into that, I've sort of given up that kind of trying to defend things from a higher level. I think that's actually the problem. I think what your thing does here is it tries to give a very low assumption basis. It's basically saying things get attracted, and when they're attracted in different kinds of configurations, they will be hanging around more and having more types of communication than others. That's it. But that's quite, you can do a lot with that. And what you do with it then is that's another thing. But it's not dependent on some, I've got a theory, some high level ontological assumptions which are that everyone has to have a shared belief, because you might not have a shared belief in some of this thing. You might not need something. And I think that's another important thing, is how much do you need to have a shared belief? And when you do need a shared belief, that's why outside of just believing in the system, that's why I don't think you can just use tokens and stuff. That's when you have to have a more community-based aspect. So that's why I put on there this idea of different layers, like the idea of a peer-to-peer network amongst the seniors living in a care home. They're not going to exchange knowledge through Bitcoin or any sort of, that's literally going to have to happen over muffins and coffee, right? Then you've got, okay, people in the community garden, maybe that's a bit more organised. Do they sell it? But it's still going to be around, now you've got people doing community outreach across different parts of an area. Now we're getting a bit more, but now you've got people who are working in service providers in an area. Now you've got people working in governance. You've got different scales, and they each might, but the thing is, if you have first principles, you can apply first principles across all of it. If you have a higher level stuff, peers in a care home, capitalism can't do anything for them. It doesn't know where to go, like these high level ideas. So I think like going back to first principles is where I've got a lot from the active inference work, is actually doing that. Anyway, and I put a bit in the chat just so that, I should have said that, but I put a load of stuff in the chat that kind of comes out of some of that. But I really think Bruno Latour's work is very, very influential for what you're talking about.
So guys, we're heading towards the wrap up here of our today's RWI, Reimagining Wealth Initiative Touchdown. It was a pleasure to have you here, Glibly, and we usually do some checkouts and do some appreciation of the explorations or the talks, the conversation that we have here. So feel free, Kimberly, to share a little bit of your what you learned or not learned, what was interesting for you to be here with us today, and feel free to come next week too. Feel free to, let's start the checkout with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just give a brief background. I started life trained as a project manager, and in those days it was carving up blocks of land, and I'd fight with the owners or the developers just to get simple things like parks developed. And then I worked in with a retirement village developer, and then I did a couple of what I call residential resorts, which were these facilities that you see in retirement villages, but anyone could move into these things. And all through this experience, it just felt like it was artificial, and all the things that you see in, like, I don't believe in like 300 units of retirement village. The accommodation we need to be designing and understanding demographics and designing these new eco villages and understanding we want to mix. So you don't just want 300 old people, you want young people, old people, and community spaces. So I guess, what I'm hoping in the future is that we're going to start to see some of these place-based villages, eco learning centres coming to life, where we can go and experiment with these new property, moving away from the norm and how do we do this thing differently. So yeah, and I put in the chat, I've been thinking a lot about these edges, because in these different kind of larger global initiatives, they want to kind of look at this whole bioregional approach to things and getting, I don't know how you go about organising that, or I've got one idea, but it just feels like we need to experiment on the ground. Like, let's just have a go and see what happens, and see how we can actually take, here's a beautiful space, but how do we put what we talk about into an experiment on the ground? That's what I'm looking forward to. With no set ideas, that's part of it.
Yeah, it's important to say, Kimberly, that nothing that I shared with you guys here is based on theory or just conversation. or just exploration, lab. This is all based on very grounded, peer-to-peer explorations of coming from different realities. This is not based on theory or nothing like that. I just want to highlight that because the way that I spoke of it seems like almost scientific, right? But no. It's really based on real experiences coming from different people's different contexts, different cultures, languages. That's basically it. We try to boil down
Yeah,
to
so
understand.
I guess it's like again layering is okay. How do we what all these experiences and lessons learned? How do we carry them forward?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to? Who else wants to do your appreciation and checkout? There's Stefan here. There's TB.
I can just quickly go if that's cool. Thanks for sharing that, and it's nice to meet you, Kimberly. Thanks for sharing that, Vinicius, because that's really, really cool. And I could feel that you're coming from, I call it an agent-based perspective or a participant perspective of things that have happened, and it's slightly different. You're modeling because you've got little dots in there, right? You're trying to model the understanding of the dots, not the story that the outside person is telling everyone, right? And that's the hard thing. You have to do that through, like you said, through real activities, because it was like that's the kind of ways people are able to have agency or do, and there's a lot of power in that actually, but it's quite different to this outside story. Basically, most stories are about the container, not what's going on inside. So yeah, let's build on that. And I think this and I was really interested in Kimberly, your work there. That's really cool because I think there's a lot of learning can be had from an example like seniors, where there can be huge resources there, wisdom and lots of knowledge, and and how can some people will be starting to get more obviously disabilities but there's so much. And I've been connecting, there's been a lot of talk, I shared a link there about someone who's having they have a farm where people can go to the farm. They've actually merged, so they have a piece of the land where they grow stuff. That's actually a community member with dementia, but they actually built it inside a farm that's a running farm. Or in other ones, they have the children's home, the children's daycare is actually going to the home for some other places. Like this kind of bringing things together to see what can happen between is, and you've done that in Vinicius, but it'd be interesting then how that applies in multiple different ways, right? It gives a principle, which is, for me, that's what I'm more excited in. So yeah, let's keep going. Who's next? Is it going to be Lauren or Tiberius?
Oh, Lauren, she's not driving anymore?
No, I'm at home.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say last week, I used the conversational menu, even though we didn't have the thing, and I was super pleased with it. I asked for help on how do you say this to someone else? And yeah, I was super satisfied with our conversation. It was super helpful to me. And Kimberly, I just want to say thank you for coming. It was nice to hear your thoughts, and I totally agree on the importance of diversity for these kind of communities, because it's always weird when you have all of these little like eco villages or senior homes or whatever. It's super unhealthy to have just like one type of people or one age. So thanks for coming. That's it.
Yeah, good. I guess it was a good discussion, and it also helped us to learn more about Vinny's experiences and understandings and theories that emanate from his practice. It's pretty good. Happy about this discussion. All right, folks. Yeah, I'm gonna go start my work day. Hope to see you around. See you next week.
See
Thank
you
you for your
around.
time.
Let's try
Thank you,
to
Vinny, for hosting.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Please, Kimberly. And
See ya.
see you folks around.
Mhm.
Bye.
It's 6:20.